The stars looked different today. Commander Zek 9 of the Galactic Federation noticed this as he stared at his scanner screen. Something was wrong with the readings near the outer edge of Federation space. The numbers kept jumping around like they couldn't make up their minds. "Sir, we're getting strange signals from Sector 7, his officer said. Her crystal body glowed blue with worry. The Zephyrians always changed colors when they felt strong emotions. What kind of strange? Zek 9 asked. He was Korthax, part of the hive mind that shared thoughts across his entire species. Right now, thousands of his people were watching through his eyes. It looks like a hole in space, sir. But that's impossible. Zek 9 walked to the main screen. The Federation had ruled the galaxy for over 300 years. They had the best technology, the strongest ships, and the smartest minds from dozens of different worlds. Nothing surprised them anymore. Nothing was impossible. But today, something was very wrong. The screen showed empty space where Sector 7 should be. Not dark space with stars far away, just nothing. Like someone had cut a piece out of reality itself. "Get me Federation Command," Zek 9 ordered. Now. Before his officer could respond, the nothing began to change. Space twisted and bent like hot metal. Energy crackled through the emptiness. Then slowly, something pushed through. It was a ship. But not like any ship Zek 9 had ever seen. The vessel was long and dark, almost black. Its hull seemed to absorb light instead of reflecting it. Strange energy fields danced across its surface, making the space around it shimmer and bend. The ship was big, maybe half the size of a Federation battleship, but it felt more dangerous somehow. "Sir," his officer whispered, "the energy readings are... they're impossible. This ship is putting out more power than our entire fleet." Zek 9 felt his hive mind buzzing with confusion. Across the galaxy, his people were trying to understand what they were seeing. No one had answers. The strange ship settled into normal space. For a moment, everything was quiet. Then it sent a message. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the United Earth ship Prometheus," a voice said in perfect galactic standard. "Please respond." Zek 9 blinked all four of his eyes. Did she say Earth? As in human Earth? Humans were barely worth noticing in the Federation. They had joined only 50 years ago and still used old, slow ships. Their technology was hundreds of years behind everyone else. The Federation only let them join because they needed the numbers for their outer patrols. "This is Commander Zek 9 of the Federation patrol ship Starlight," he replied. "Identify yourself and explain how you got here." "Commander, I need to speak with your Federation Council immediately. We don't have much time. Answer my questions first, human. What is that ship? Where did it come from?" There was a pause. Then Captain Vasquez spoke again, and her words made Zek 9's blood run cold. "Commander, my ship is from the year 2847. We've traveled back in time to prevent the destruction of all life in this galaxy. The Void Hunters are coming, and without our help, everyone will die." The bridge went silent. Even the ship's computers seemed to stop humming. Time travel was impossible. The Federation's best scientists had proven it dozens of times, and the idea that humans of all species could build something the Federation couldn't. It was ridiculous. "You expect me to believe that?" Zek 9 said. "I expect you to listen, Commander. In 7 years, an enemy will arrive that feeds on reality itself. They will consume every star, every planet, every living thing. The only reason I know this is because I lived through it the first time. Impossible. The first world to fall will be Zephyr Prime," Captain Vasquez continued. "The crystals that make up your homeworld will turn black and crumble to dust. The Korthax hive mind will be cut into pieces, each part dying alone and afraid. The Luminari will simply stop existing. Their energy forms scattered across empty space." Zek 9 felt the hive mind recoil in horror. These were their deepest fears, things they never spoke about to other species. "How could a human know?" "You're lying," he said, but his voice shook. "I wish I was, Commander. But in my timeline, I watched it all happen. I was there when Earth became the last world left alive. I was there when we finally found a way to fight back. And I'm here now because we decided that saving everyone was more important than saving ourselves." "Sir," his officer interrupted. 3 Federation battle cruisers just dropped out of warp. Admiral Kress is demanding to speak with the human ship." Zek 9 cursed under his breath. Admiral Kress was hegemony, a species that believed in strength above all else. They would not handle the situation well. "Captain Vasquez," he said, "Admiral Kress is here. He will demand that you surrender your ship for inspection." "I understand, Commander." But I cannot do that. Too many lives depend on the technology aboard this ship. Then you'll have to fight 3 battlecruisers with whatever impossible weapons you have. I really hope not, Commander. We didn't come here to fight you. We came here to save you. Admiral Kress's voice boomed across all frequencies. Attention, human vessel. You will power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will be met with force, Captain Vasquez sighed. Commander Zek-9, please record what happens next. Your people will need to see this to understand what we're trying to tell you. What are you going to do? Something I really don't want to do, but something you need to see. The Prometheus began to move. It didn't accelerate like normal ships. It didn't turn or bank or use its engines. It simply moved. Space seemed to bend around it, pulling the ship forward without any visible means of propulsion. Admiral Kress ordered his ships to fire warning shots. Plasma bolts and quantum torpedoes streaked toward the human vessel. They should have hit. The Prometheus was right there, solid and real, but the weapons passed right through it like it wasn't there at all. What? How? Zek-9 stammered. Quantum phase technology, Captain Vasquez explained calmly. We learned to step partially out of normal space-time. Very useful against enemies who exist in multiple dimensions. Admiral Kress was screaming orders now. His ships fired everything they had. Massive energy beams that could crack planets in half. Gravity bombs that could crush a moon. Fusion missiles that burned as hot as stars. Nothing touched the Prometheus. Then the human ship did something that made Zek-9's heart stop beating. It reached out with invisible hands and grabbed Admiral Kress's flagship. The massive battle cruiser, bigger than a city, simply stopped moving. Its engine strained and screamed, but it couldn't move an inch. We call this a gravity lock, Captain Vasquez said. It focuses gravitational fields to hold objects in place. We developed it to stop Void Hunter ships from escaping. Let me go, human. Admiral Kress roared. Of course, Admiral. I just wanted to show you something first. The Prometheus released a small object from its hull. It looked like a simple metal ball, no bigger than a person's head. It drifted toward one of the other Federation ships. When it touched the hull, something impossible happened. The entire ship began to age. Metal turned to rust. Energy conduits went dark. In less than 30 seconds, a powerful warship became a cloud of ancient dust floating in space. Temporal acceleration, Captain Vasquez explained. The missile speeds up time for whatever it touches. That ship just experienced 10,000 years in 30 seconds. The bridge was dead silent. Zek-9 could feel the hive mind reeling in shock. Across the galaxy, his people were trying to process what they had just seen. Now, Captain Vasquez said, would you like to hear about the Void Hunters? Because compared to them, what you just saw is nothing, and they'll be here in 7 years. The Federation Council chamber had never been so quiet. Representatives from 47 different species sat in stunned silence as they watched the recording from Commander Zek-9's ship. They had just seen a human vessel do things that should have been impossible. Council leader Varix, a tall luminary whose energy form glowed with nervous yellow light, spoke first. This must be some kind of trick. Humans barely understand quantum physics. They cannot have technology like this. The evidence is right there, Commander Zek-9 replied through the communication link. I saw it with my own eyes. My ship's sensors recorded everything. Sensors can be fooled, Admiral Kress growled. He had managed to get his remaining ships to a safe distance, but his pride was badly wounded. This is an elaborate deception. Humans are trying to make us afraid, so we'll give them more power in the Federation. Minister Quill, whose crystal body was flashing angry red colors, agreed. Humans have always been schemers. Remember how they convinced us to let them join the Federation in the first place? They probably built some kind of hologram ship. Captain Vasquez's voice came through the speakers calmly. Council members, I understand your doubt. In your place, I would doubt too, but I can prove everything I've told you. How? Varix demanded. Let me show you the future. The Prometheus began transmitting data. Not simple video recordings, but complete quantum scans of events that hadn't happened yet. The ship's computers had mapped every battle, every death, every moment of the coming war with perfect detail. The Council watched in growing horror as the data played out before them. They saw Void Hunter ships that looked like holes in space itself. They saw planets simply disappearing, not destroyed but erased from reality. They saw their own species fighting desperately and losing badly. This cannot be real, Minister Quill whispered. Her crystal form had gone completely white with fear. I'm afraid it is, Captain Vasquez said. In my timeline, the Void Hunters arrived in 2394, 7 years from now. The first world to fall was Zephyr Prime, just as I told Commander Zek 9. They consumed the living crystals that made up your planet's core. Without them, your entire species began to die. The Zephyrian representatives began flashing colors rapidly, their version of panic. They were remembering old prophecies about the crystal death that their ancestors had feared. The Korthak's hive mind held out longer, Captain Vasquez continued. But the Void Hunters found a way to cut the mental connections between your people. Imagine being suddenly alone in your own head after a lifetime of sharing thoughts with millions of others. Several Korthak's representatives fell to their knees, overwhelmed by the terrible idea. The Luminari fought bravely, using their energy forms to attack the Void ships directly. But the Hunters consumed energy as easily as they consumed matter. Your people simply faded away. The yellow glow around Council Leader Varric dimmed to almost nothing. Enough, Admiral Kress shouted. Even if this is all true, what makes you think we need human help? We have the strongest military in the galaxy, because I watched your military die, Admiral. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon, nothing worked against an enemy that exists partially outside our reality. Then how did humans survive when we couldn't? Captain Vasquez was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was heavy with old pain. We didn't survive, Admiral. Not really. When the Void Hunters reached Earth, we were the last inhabited world left. We activated experimental time dilation fields around our planet, making time move much slower for us. While the rest of the galaxy experienced the final attack, Earth lived through centuries of research and development. You abandoned us, Minister Quill accused. We tried to save everyone, but by the time we developed weapons that could hurt the Void Hunters, there was no one left to save. Earth was alone in an empty galaxy. The council chamber fell silent again. The idea of being the last living beings in the galaxy was too horrible to imagine. That's when we made our choice, Captain Vasquez continued. We could use our time technology to escape to a different timeline, where Earth was never attacked. Or we could come back and save everyone. And you chose to come back, Varric said quietly. We chose everyone over ourselves. The Prometheus is powered by a quantum singularity generator. It's incredibly powerful, but it's also slowly consuming the ship from inside. We have maybe a year before the ship destroys itself. We knew this when we left. You're going to die saving us? Commander Zek 9 asked. If that's what it takes, yes, but hopefully we can teach you to save yourselves. Admiral Kress stood up, his massive form towering over the other council members. This is all very touching, but I still don't trust you. How do we know you won't use this advanced technology to conquer us? Captain Vasquez laughed, but there was no humor in it. Admiral, if we wanted to conquer you, we would have done it already. The Prometheus could destroy your entire fleet without breaking a sweat. Prove it. Admiral. Captain Vasquez's voice carried a warning. You heard me, human. If you're so powerful, prove it. Fight our entire fleet. Show us what you can really do. Several council members tried to object, but Kress was already giving orders. Within an hour, 30 Federation warships had assembled near the Prometheus. They represented the finest military technology from dozens of worlds. Last chance to surrender peacefully, Admiral Kress broadcast. I really don't want to do this, Captain Vasquez replied, but if it will convince you to listen. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted less than 10 minutes. The Federation ships attacked in coordinated waves, using tactics that had never failed before. They fired quantum torpedoes, plasma beams, gravity bombs, and fusion missiles all at once. Enough firepower to destroy a small moon. The Prometheus simply wasn't there when the weapons arrived. The ship seemed to dance between dimensions, appearing and disappearing at will. When it did appear, it moved in ways that hurt to watch, bending space around itself like water. Then the Prometheus began to fight back. It didn't use the big, obvious weapons the Federation expected. Instead, it released small objects that looked harmless. Some were tiny metal spheres no bigger than a person's fist. Others looked like drops of liquid starlight. When the spheres touched Federation ships, those ships began to age rapidly, just like before. 500-year-old vessels crumbled to dust in seconds. When the drops of light hit their targets, the ships simply stopped working. Every system shut down at once, leaving them helpless in space. Temporal accelerators and quantum disruptors, Captain Vasquez explained as she disabled ship after ship. We learned to fight enemies that could regenerate almost instantly. We had to find ways to either age them to death or shut down their exotic energy systems. In less than 10 minutes, the entire Federation fleet was either destroyed or disabled. Not a single shot had hit the Prometheus. Admiral Kress sat in his command chair staring at his dead weapon systems. His flagship was intact but completely powerless. Even the life support was running on backup batteries. "Do you understand now?" Captain Vasquez asked gently. "This isn't about humans being better than anyone else. This is about what we had to become to survive an impossible enemy. And even with all this technology, we barely won the first time." "How?" Varix whispered. "How did the Void Hunters defeat fleets like this?" "Because they don't fight fair, Council Leader. They exist in multiple dimensions at once. They can attack from directions that don't exist in our reality. And worst of all, they learn. Every weapon we used against them, they found ways to counter. Then how do we stop them? Together. Every species in the Federation has something unique to offer. The Zephyrians understand crystal resonance frequencies that can disrupt interdimensional fields. The Korthax hive mind can coordinate defenses across multiple star systems instantly. The Luminari can manipulate energy in ways that even our future technology can't match." Captain Vasquez paused, letting her words sink in. "Humans survived the first timeline because we're good at adapting and building tools. But we can't win this war alone. None of us can. We need everyone working together, using the best of all our technologies and abilities." "What do you need from us?" Commander Zek-9 asked. "Trust, time, and the willingness to believe that sometimes the impossible is just another kind of possible." The council chamber was quiet for a long time. Finally, Council Leader Varix spoke. "Show us what we need to do." Captain Elena Vasquez stood in the holographic projection chamber aboard the Prometheus, surrounded by the greatest minds in the Federation. Scientists, military leaders, and political representatives from dozens of worlds had gathered to see the evidence she promised to show them. "What you're about to see is not a simulation," she began. "These are actual quantum recordings from the original timeline. Every death, every battle, every moment of loss, it all really happened." The chamber darkened, and suddenly they were floating in space above a beautiful blue-green world. Zephyr Prime, the crystal homeworld, sparkled like a jewel against the stars. "This was taken on June 15th, 2394, Captain Vasquez said quietly, 3 days before the first Void Hunter scout arrived. The scene shifted. Space began to tear open like cloth, revealing something that hurt to look at. It wasn't black or dark, it was nothing. A complete absence of everything that should exist. From the tear emerged something that might have been a ship, if ships could exist in impossible shapes. It looked different from every angle, as if it existed in more dimensions than the eye could see. Where it moved, stars simply stopped shining. The Void Hunters don't travel through space, Captain Vasquez explained. They travel through the spaces between realities. They're not from our universe. They're from somewhere else entirely. The Federation representatives watched in horror as the Void ship approached Zephyr Prime. The planet's crystal defenses activated, sending brilliant beams of energy toward the intruder. The beams passed right through it without any effect. Then the Void ship did something impossible. It reached out with invisible hands and began to pull the planet apart, not with weapons or tools, but by simply making parts of the planet stop existing. The crystals that make up Zephyr Prime exist in a quantum state, Captain Vasquez said as they watched the planet crumble. They were never fully in our reality to begin with. The Void Hunters consumed the quantum fields that held them together. Minister Quill, the Zephyrian representative, was flashing desperate colors. "Our people, all those people, 14 billion Zephyrians died that day," Captain Vasquez said softly. But it was just the beginning. The scene changed to show the Korthax homeworld. The hive mind had mobilized every ship they had, creating a massive defensive grid around their planet. Thousands of vessels moved in perfect coordination, their shared thoughts allowing them to fight as one giant organism. The Void Hunters sent 3 ships against them. "Watch carefully," Captain Vasquez said. "This is important. The Void ships didn't attack the Korthax fleet directly. Instead, they did something far worse. They began to cut the mental connections between individual Korthax minds. The fleet's perfect coordination fell apart instantly. Ships collided with each other as their pilots suddenly found themselves alone in their own heads for the first time in their lives. The hive mind that had connected the Korthax for millions of years was severed in minutes. Several Korthax representatives in the chamber fell to their knees, overwhelmed by the memory of their species' greatest fear. The Void Hunters can manipulate the fundamental forces that hold reality together, Captain Vasquez explained, including the quantum entanglement fields that create hive minds. How many died? Commander Zek-9 asked, his 4 eyes wide with horror. The entire population, 47 billion Korthax. They couldn't function as individuals. Most of them simply stopped living. The hologram shifted again, showing the homeworld of the Luminari. These energy beings lived in a space station built around their sun, feeding directly on solar radiation. When the Void Hunters arrived, the Luminari tried to fight them with pure energy attacks. The Luminari were brave, Captain Vasquez said, as they watched beings of living light throw themselves at the void ships. They realized early that the Hunters consumed matter and energy equally, so they tried to overload them, feeding the void ships more energy than they could handle. For a moment, it looked like the plan might work. One of the void ships began to flicker and twist, as if it couldn't handle the massive energy input. Then it split in half. Each half became a full void ship. They reproduce by consuming energy, Captain Vasquez said grimly. The more you feed them, the stronger they become. The Luminari fought until the very end, but they were fighting an enemy that grew stronger with every attack. Within hours, their sun went dark and their species simply faded away. How many species did they destroy? Council Leader Varix asked, his energy form dim with grief. All of them. Every single intelligent species in the galaxy. The hegemony lasted the longest because they had the strongest military, but even they fell within 6 months. The hologram showed the final battle above the hegemony homeworld. Admiral Kress watched in silence as ships identical to his own flagship were torn apart by enemies they couldn't even touch. 200 billion sapient beings died in the Void War, Captain Vasquez continued. Planets full of children who never got to grow up. Scientists who were just on the edge of great discoveries. Artists who had so much more to create. And humans? Minister Quill asked. How did you survive when no one else could? Captain Vasquez's expression darkened. We didn't survive. We hid. The hologram shifted one final time, showing Earth surrounded by a shimmering field of distorted spacetime. When the Void Hunters reached Earth, we activated experimental temporal fields. We slowed down time inside the field to 1% of normal speed. From the outside, it looked like we had been destroyed too. But you hadn't been? No, we were living in slow motion. While the Void Hunters spent a few days cleaning up the last resistance in the galaxy, we experienced decades of research and development. Our greatest minds worked for subjective centuries to understand what we were fighting. You watched everyone die and did nothing? Admiral Kress accused. What could we do? Captain Vasquez shot back. Send our primitive ships against enemies that had just destroyed fleets 1,000 times more advanced? We would have died uselessly, and then there would have been no one left to find a solution. So you found a solution. Eventually, it took us 300 subjective years to develop weapons that could hurt them. Temporal accelerators that could age even interdimensional beings. Quantum phase technology that let us exist partially outside normal space. Reality anchors that could force them into our dimension where we could fight them. And you won? Captain Vasquez was quiet for a long moment. We drove them back to whatever hell they came from. But by then we were alone. The only living beings in an empty galaxy. The hologram chamber fell silent. The weight of what they had learned was crushing. An enemy that could destroy entire civilizations in hours. An enemy that grew stronger as you fought it. An enemy that existed in ways that made normal weapons useless. Why did you come back? Commander Zek-9 asked. You could have used your time technology to escape to a different timeline. One where Earth was never attacked. Because we realized something important during those lonely centuries after the war. Survival isn't just about staying alive. It's about what you do with the life you have. Captain Vasquez looked around at the assembled representatives, meeting each of their eyes. We spent 300 years developing incredible technology. We could have used it to build paradise for ourselves. Instead, we chose to come back and save people we had never met. People who didn't even like us very much. Why? Varix asked. Because that's what being human means. We don't just save ourselves. We save everyone we can, even when it costs us everything. But the timeline has already changed, Admiral Kress pointed out. The Void Hunters might not come at all now. Captain Vasquez shook her head. They're already here. My ship's temporal sensors detected void scout ships 2 days ago. They're arriving 3 months early, and in greater numbers than before. The chamber erupted in panic. Representatives began shouting questions and demands, but Captain Vasquez held up her hand for silence. The good news is that we have time to prepare. The bad news is that they know something has changed. They're being more careful this time. What do we need to do? Council Leader Varix asked. We need to work together. Every species, every world, every person who wants to live through this war. The Void Hunters are powerful, but they have weaknesses. They exist partially outside our reality, which means they have trouble dealing with things that are completely real. Such as quantum entangled crystals that exist in only one reality state, hive minds that span multiple dimensions, energy beings that can exist in several phases at once. Each of your species has natural abilities that the Void Hunters struggle to understand. And humans? Captain Vasquez smiled grimly. We're good at building tools and adapting to impossible situations, which is exactly what we're going to need. She activated a new hologram showing technical specifications for weapons and defensive systems. I'm going to teach you how to build reality anchors, temporal disruptors, quantum phase generators, everything we learned in 300 years of research. But you have to promise me something. What? That you'll use this knowledge to save everyone. Not just your own species, everyone. The representatives looked at each other, considering. Finally, Council Leader Varix spoke for all of them. We promise. Show us how to fight back. The transformation of the galaxy began immediately. Within days of Captain Vasquez's demonstration, construction yards across Federation space were working around the clock to retrofit their fleets with human future technology. Engineer Sarah, Chen from the Prometheus, worked alongside Zephyrian crystal shapers in the great forges of Zephyr Prime. The Zephyrians had always been master craftsmen, able to grow crystals into any shape they could imagine. Now they were learning to grow crystals that existed in only one reality state. The quantum field has to be perfectly stable, Sarah explained as she watched Master Craftsman Vale shape a glowing blue crystal with his bare hands. If it shifts even slightly between dimensions, the Void Hunters can grab it and tear it apart. Vale's crystalline body flashed understanding colors. Like building a house from frozen time instead of regular stone. Exactly. These reality-locked crystals will form the core of our new defensive shields. The Void Hunters won't be able to phase through them because they exist completely in our dimension. The work was difficult and dangerous. 3 Zephyrian workers had already been injured when crystals exploded during the growing process. But every successful crystal brought them one step closer to having shields that could actually stop Void Hunter attacks. Meanwhile, on the Korthax homeworld, Lieutenant Marcus Webb was working with the hive mind to develop new communication systems. The Korthax shared thoughts instantly across their entire species, making them perfect coordinators for fleet operations. The problem is that the Void Hunters can cut your mental connections, Marcus explained to the assembled Korthax commanders. We need to build backup systems that work even when your hive mind is severed. Commander Zek 9 spoke for his people. You want us to learn to think alone. I want you to be able to think alone when you have to. Look at this. Marcus activated a holographic display showing Federation fleets arranged in perfect defensive formations. In the original timeline, your coordination was so perfect that when the Void Hunters cut your connections, your entire military collapsed instantly. This time, we're going to teach individual Korthax how to make decisions independently. That goes against everything we are, another Korthax commander protested. I know, but it might save your species. The training was painful for the Korthax. They had to learn to suppress their natural instinct to share every thought and emotion. Human psychologists worked with them to develop individual personalities and decision-making skills they had never needed before. On the Luminary space stations, Dr. James Park was helping the energy beings understand new forms of combat. The Luminary were naturally peaceful, preferring to create rather than destroy. But the coming war would require them to fight in ways they had never imagined. Your energy forms can exist in multiple phases simultaneously, Dr. Park explained to a gathering of Luminary elders. That makes you incredibly difficult for the Void Hunters to target. Elder Solaris, whose energy body glowed with ancient wisdom, pulsed with curiosity. How do we use this ability as a weapon? By learning to exist in quantum superposition. You can be in several places at once, attacking from angles that don't exist in normal space. Show us. Dr. Park activated a training simulation. Holographic void hunters appeared around them, their impossible shapes twisting through multiple dimensions. Watch what happens when you phase shift during an attack. Elder Solaris concentrated, his energy form beginning to flicker and multiply. Suddenly there were dozens of him, each one existing in a slightly different dimensional phase. When the holographic void hunters tried to attack, their weapons passed through empty space while the real Solaris struck from unexpected directions. Incredible. Solaris breathed. We never knew we could do this. Your species has amazing potential. You just need to learn to think like warriors instead of artists. But not everyone in the Federation was happy with the changes. Admiral Kress and several other hegemony leaders had formed a secret coalition opposing human leadership. This is exactly what I warned you about, Kress told his supporters in a hidden meeting chamber. The humans are using this Void Hunter story to take control of our military. Soon they'll be giving us orders and we'll be their slaves. General Thorne, whose reptilian features were twisted with anger, agreed. My sources tell me that human advisors are being placed in command positions throughout the fleet. They're taking over from the inside. What do you suggest we do? Asked Minister Corville, a tall insectoid whose species had joined the conspiracy. We take the human ship, Kress said simply. Capture their technology for ourselves and prove that their future knowledge is just an elaborate hoax. How? We've seen what the Prometheus can do. I have a plan, but it will require perfect coordination and absolute secrecy. 3 weeks later, Admiral Kress put his plan into action. He had secretly modified 20 Federation ships with experimental quantum dampening fields, designed to prevent the Prometheus from phasing out of normal space. If they could trap the human ship in one dimension, their superior numbers might be enough to overwhelm it. The attack came during a routine technology transfer near the edge of Federation space. Kress's ships dropped out of warp in perfect formation, immediately activating their dampening fields. Captain Vasquez, Kress broadcasted, surrender your ship and your crew will be treated well. Resist and we'll destroy you. Captain Vasquez's response was calm but tired. Admiral, we really don't have time for this. There are Void Hunter scouts gathering at the Galactic Rim. We need to be preparing defenses, not fighting each other. The only threat to this galaxy is human ambition. Power down your weapons. I can't do that, Admiral. Too many lives depend on the knowledge aboard this ship. Then you've chosen to die. The 20 Federation ships opened fire at once, their quantum dampening fields preventing the Prometheus from escaping into phase space. For a moment it looked like Kress's plan might work. Then Captain Vasquez showed him why humans had survived the Void War. The Prometheus didn't try to phase out of normal space. Instead, it did something else entirely. The ship began to emit a strange humming sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Harmonic resonance, Captain Vasquez explained as Kress's ships began to shake apart. We're matching the natural frequency of your ship hulls and amplifying it. Metal fatigue happens very quickly when you do this. Within minutes, all 20 Federation ships were drifting helplessly in space, their hulls cracked and their engines dead. Not a single crew member had been killed, but their ships were completely disabled. Admiral, Captain Vasquez said gently, we could have destroyed your ships in seconds. We could have used temporal accelerators to age them to dust. We could have phase shifted and attacked from dimensions you can't even see. But we didn't because you're not our enemy. Then why disable us? To make a point. The Void Hunters are coming whether you believe in them or not. You can fight us and guarantee that everyone dies. Or you can work with us and maybe save the galaxy. Admiral Kress sat in his damaged command chair, staring at his dead weapon systems. Around him, his crew worked frantically to restore basic life support. How do I know you won't just take over once the threat is gone? He asked. Because, Admiral, we won't be here once the threat is gone. The quantum singularity that powers this ship is consuming it from the inside. We have maybe 6 months before the Prometheus destroys itself. We came here to save you, not to rule you. You're going to die. That was always the plan. The only question is whether we die saving an empty galaxy or a living one. The communication channel went quiet for a long time. Finally, Admiral Kress spoke again. What do you need from us? Help us finish the preparations. The real enemy is almost here. As if summoned by his words, alarms began sounding throughout Federation space. Long-range sensors had detected something impossible at the Galactic Rim. Space itself was beginning to tear open. Captain Vasquez's voice carried new urgency. All ships, this is the Prometheus. The first Void Hunter scouts have arrived. This is not a drill. The war begins now. Across the galaxy, newly retrofitted Federation ships powered up their reality-locked shields and quantum disruptors. Zephyrian crystals hummed with stable energy. Korthax commanders prepared to coordinate the largest military operation in galactic history. Luminary warriors phase-shifted into combat positions, and in the deep void between stars, tiers in reality began to widen as something hungry and impossible pushed through from another universe entirely. The Void War had begun. Commander Zek 9 stood on the bridge of his newly upgraded ship, watching the tactical displays as Void Hunter scouts probed Federation defenses. The aliens looked different than in Captain Vasquez's recordings. They seemed more cautious, more aware that something had changed. Captain Vasquez, he transmitted to the Prometheus. They know we're ready for them this time. I know, Commander. They're learning. That's what makes them so dangerous. What's our next move? Captain Vasquez was quiet for a moment, studying the tactical data. When she spoke again, her voice was grim. We show them that this galaxy won't go quietly. All ships prepare for engagement. Let's give them a fight they'll never forget. The greatest battle in galactic history was about to begin. The invasion began at dawn on every world simultaneously. Across the galaxy, tiers in space opened like wounds, pouring forth ships that hurt to look at directly. The Void Hunters had learned from their previous victory and were taking no chances this time. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, watching the tactical displays with growing dread. They're not making the same mistakes, she told her crew. Look at their formation patterns. They're spreading out, hitting multiple targets at once instead of concentrating their forces. How many ships? Her tactical officer asked. 3 times more than in the original timeline, maybe 4 times. They know we changed something, and they're compensating. The first Federation response fleets engaged the Void Hunters near the outer rim worlds. The new reality-locked shields held against the initial attacks, but barely. Void Hunter weapons still found ways to tear through defenses that should have been impossible to breach. Commander Zek 9's voice crackled over the communication link from his flagship. Captain Vasquez, the shields are holding, but we're taking heavy damage. These new weapons they're using, they're adapting to our technology in real time. I know, Commander. Fall back to the secondary defense line. Don't let them surround you. What about the colony worlds? Captain Vasquez closed her eyes for a moment. In the original timeline, the Federation had tried to defend every world at once and lost everything. This time they had to be smarter. We evacuate what we can and fall back. We can't save everyone if we lose our fleets trying to save anyone. The retreat was organized chaos. Millions of civilian ships fled toward the galactic core while Federation fleets conducted fighting withdrawals against an enemy that seemed to grow stronger with every battle. The new weapons were working, but not well enough. On Zephyr Prime, the crystal shapers worked frantically to complete their greatest creation. Master Craftsman Vale had grown a massive reality crystal the size of a building, one that could anchor an entire star system in normal space-time. It's ready, he transmitted to the Federation command. But we need time to activate it properly. How much time? Captain Vasquez asked. 6 hours for full activation, but the Void Hunters will be here in 2. Then we hold them for 6 hours. The Battle of Zephyr Prime became the first major test of the new Federation tactics. Instead of meeting the Void Hunters in open space, the defenders pulled back to the crystal homeworld itself. The planetary defense grid had been upgraded with quantum disruptors and temporal accelerators, creating overlapping fields of deadly energy. The Void Hunters attacked in waves, their impossible ships twisting through dimensions as they tried to reach the planet's surface. But the reality crystal was already beginning to work, forcing the attackers to exist more solidly in normal space. Elder Solaris led a squadron of luminary fighters in the first coordinated phase shift attack ever attempted. The energy beings flickered in and out of multiple dimensions, striking Void Hunter ships from angles that shouldn't exist. It's working, Solaris transmitted as a void ship exploded in a burst of unraveling space-time. They can't track us when we phase shift. But the Void Hunters were learning. The second wave of attackers came equipped with new sensors that could detect phase-shifted energy signatures. Solaris watched in horror as his fellow Luminari were targeted and destroyed even while existing in quantum superposition. They're adapting too fast, he reported. We need a new strategy. Hold position, Captain Vasquez ordered. I'm coming. The Prometheus dropped out of quantum phase directly in the middle of the Void Hunter fleet. For a moment, both sides were too surprised to react. Then Captain Vasquez activated every weapon system on her ship at once. Temporal accelerators aged void ships to dust. Quantum disruptors tore holes in their interdimensional forms. Reality anchors forced them into normal space where conventional weapons could hurt them. In 30 seconds, the Prometheus destroyed more void hunters than the entire Federation fleet had managed in 3 hours. But there were hundreds more ships coming through the dimensional tiers, and the Prometheus was beginning to show signs of strain. The quantum singularity that powered the ship was destabilizing, sending energy fluctuations through every system. "Captain," her engineer reported, "the singularity is becoming unstable. We're getting cascade failures throughout the ship. How long do we have? Maybe an hour before complete system failure." Captain Vasquez looked at the tactical display. The Void Hunters were regrouping for another assault, and more tiers were opening throughout the galaxy. Even with all their preparations, the Federation was losing. "Open a channel to all Federation forces," she ordered. "Channel open, Captain." "This is Captain Vasquez of the Prometheus. I need to tell you something important. The quantum singularity that powers this ship is designed to do more than just provide energy. It's a reality anchor, capable of stabilizing the fundamental forces that hold space-time together." Commander Zek 9's voice came over the link. "What are you saying, Captain?" "I'm saying that if we detonate the singularity at the right moment in the right place, we can seal every dimensional tier in the galaxy. Permanently. The Void Hunters will be trapped in our reality where we can fight them on equal terms." "What about your ship? Your crew?" Captain Vasquez was quiet for a moment. Around her, the bridge crew continued working at their stations, each of them understanding what she was proposing. "The Prometheus won't survive the detonation, but if we time it right, if we can get to the center of their main fleet first, we can take most of them with us." "Captain, no. There has to be another way." "There isn't, Commander. This is what we came here to do. This is why we built this ship." Admiral Kress, who had been listening in silence, suddenly spoke up. "Human. Elena, you don't have to do this alone. My fleet can escort you to the center of their formation. Admiral, your ships won't survive that kind of assault." "Maybe not, but we'll get you close enough to do what needs to be done." Across the galaxy, Federation fleets began converging on the main Void Hunter invasion force. Ships that had been enemies hours before now flew together in desperate coordination. Zephyrian crystal ships provided shielding. Korthax vessels coordinated the attack patterns. Luminary fighters scouted ahead in phase shift. The final approach was a nightmare of twisted space and impossible geometry. Void Hunter ships filled the area around the largest dimensional tear, their forms shifting between realities as they tried to process what was happening. "All ships, this is Admiral Kress. We're going to punch a hole through their formation and get the Prometheus to the center. Whatever happens, don't stop. Don't look back. Just keep moving forward." The Federation fleet hit the Void Hunters like a hammer blow. Ships exploded on both sides as the two forces tore into each other with everything they had. The Prometheus moved through the battle like a knife through cloth, its advanced shields deflecting attacks that destroyed entire Federation vessels. Commander Zek 9's ship took a direct hit from a void weapon, its hull beginning to age rapidly. "Hull breach on Deck 7, his officer reported. "We're losing structural integrity." "Keep going," Zek 9 ordered.
"Get the Prometheus through."
Elder Solaris and his remaining luminary fighters threw themselves at the largest void ships, sacrificing their energy forms to clear a path. "Tell my people," he transmitted as his light began to fade. "Tell them we chose to burn bright." Admiral Kress's flagship was falling apart around him, its shields failing and its weapons offline. But he held his position, using his ship's bulk to block void attacks aimed at the Prometheus. "Elena," he transmitted, "you were right. About everything. I'm sorry I doubted you. Admiral, you gave us the time we needed. Your species will remember your courage." The Prometheus reached the center of the Void Hunter formation, positioning itself directly in front of the largest dimensional tear. Around them, reality twisted and bent as hundreds of void ships tried to stop what they finally understood was coming. "All Federation ships, withdraw to minimum safe distance," Captain Vasquez ordered. "This is going to be big." Her crew worked at their stations with quiet efficiency, preparing the quantum singularity for detonation. They had known this moment would come from the day they left Earth in the year 2847. "Captain," her tactical officer said, Singularity is ready for controlled detonation. Thank you, John. It's been an honor serving with all of you. She opened a final channel to the Federation fleet. Tell them we came back to save everyone. Tell them that humanity chose hope over fear, sacrifice over safety. Tell them to remember that the impossible is just another kind of possible. Captain Vasquez pressed the detonation control. The Prometheus exploded in a burst of pure temporal energy that expanded at the speed of light. The quantum singularity collapsed and then rebounded, creating a wave of stabilized spacetime that washed over the entire galaxy. Every dimensional tear snapped shut like closing wounds. Void hunter ships caught in normal space suddenly found themselves vulnerable to conventional weapons. The surviving Federation fleet fell on them with a fury born of loss and hope combined. The battle lasted another 6 hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. Trapped in a single reality, the Void Hunters could be hurt, could be killed, could be defeated. The last Void ship was destroyed as the sun rose over Zephyr Prime.